Okay, so I'm blogging to you here from East Africa. I'm on this trip to Kenya and then to Malawi, where we're working on some projects on red in Kenya on the Cascale Corridor project. And here we are, just a quick trip out into the field in the Rukinga Ranch area of Kenya, close to the Tsavo National Park, Tsavo East. This is a cheetah that we've spotted. Beautiful. So let me talk a little bit more about what we're doing in Kenya a little bit later. Okay, so I'm here in Kenya, in the eastern part of Kenya and in the south. There is this place that's shown on the map with the red dot that is a landscape that is mostly privately owned land made up of some very large, what they call ranches, that have been used in the past but are for cattle ranching and some other things, but in the colonial period, but are now pretty much abandoned. But they're being heavily cleared for charcoal, fuel wood, and some itinerant agriculture. These are acacia woodlands that are sparse vegetation, but has some carbon stocks, but are basically woodland savanna systems like you think of from Africa, where the big game are. But it juts right up into the split between the Tsavo East and Tsavo West, the two largest national parks in Kenya, and extremely large national parks that are home to some important wildlife like elephants and cheetahs, like you saw before. And the idea is that there's a group of people called Wildlife Works, and later we'll show you the webpage for them, where they're moving in to take the land from these ranchers, purchasing them, and then rehabilitating the land into habitat for animals like big game and in particular elephants, and then bridge the broken corridor between Tsavo East and Tsavo West. But while it's a habitat restoration activity, they're also measuring carbon, and they're putting the carbon stocks as red projects up on the landscape, up on the market. They've already sold $58 million worth of carbon credits. The ranch and the area is a huge area. The ranch itself is 30,000 hectares, and then they're working in the communities and the villages all around that whole area, and with other private landowners. So here we are working with them to help do the measurements and using the remote sensing, which is something they're not doing. But it's an interesting project, and I wanted to introduce you to that a little bit here. Okay, so here's the website for Wildlife Works, www.wildlifeworks.com. It is a company, and the company is actually putting in place in this same location small factories for sustainable apparel. And you can go to their website and see their marketing of the products, the sustainable apparel, or using organic cotton and things like that, all fair trade, fair labor practices, etc. But then the footprint of the factories is very small compared to the large area that they actually own, and are doing a kind of private trust establishment of the habitat. And they're working very closely with communities, not only to provide labor for the factories, but also all the guards for this area are trained and hired and paid for by Wildlife Works. This is an American company. It's one of these social entrepreneur companies, and I encourage you to look at it because it's a fascinating thing what they're doing. This project was the first red project in Africa. So here's the landscape, and what you can see is the road that heads south to Mombasa from Nairobi, and it's a sparsely covered acacia woodland, and you can see the remnant fields, agricultural fields that are part of the ranch, where they're letting now natural regeneration, or what we would call in the red parlance, enhancement of carbon stocks take place. Primarily, again, to fill the gap in the corridor, the migration corridor between the Savo East and Savo West. They've put down 500 individual plots to do the forest inventory, and then we were coming in to assist with the plots and the inventory, but also to do some remote sensing with these folks. So you saw this image before. It's a very large area. This is the ranch on a satellite image outlined in yellow. And I've marked, for some of us who live in Michigan, two cities, Brighton and Ann Arbor. And that's how far this area, this private land, extends. And you can see the expansive nature of this area and the woodlands on the right with that inserted picture. And so what we're trying to do then is enhance the capability of people on the ground to get large areas like this covered with satellite data, and also work on the mapping of trees using high resolution imagery from space, because we need to do some mapping of individual trees and some very detailed mapping across a very large area, which can only be done with remote sensing. And so here's the product. It's using a fractional cover, a continuous fields method, where we are mapping carbon stocks across the landscape. We build the carbon stock data up from the field plots, and and then extrapolate using the fractional cover from the satellite imagery. And so low carbon stocks are in bright yellow-green, and the high carbon stocks are in the darker colors of green. And this is then can be used to do their carbon accounting and reporting. Okay, so one of the things that Wildlife Works is doing is engaging the local communities around this area. By engaging the communities, they're able to get a lot of value added by additional projects for conservation, not just on the property, but in all the areas around the property and in the villages, to reduce the consumption of whole trees for charcoal production, to plant more trees in the landscape, and to do a lot of other things. And in turn, the sale of the carbon credits is going back to these communities to benefit them. So there's a trust that was set up by Wildlife Works to split the credits and the benefits from the carbon sales to the communities. And that's done 50-50. And the revenues that the communities get go for clean water projects, schools, clinics, and other kinds of things like that. And so here they're leading a kind of a group of community leaders, village elders that have come out into the bush to see what's going on, and they're being instructed by some of the staff people that Wildlife Works hires from the communities themselves, that are the guys setting up the inventory plots to do the measurements. These are some of the young people that are hired to do forest inventory according to the standard IPCC protocols, with out of the communities. one guy in the middle with the GPS behind the guy that's taking the recording lost all of his family to HIV. This is an area that has one of the highest HIV rates anywhere in the world for some very specific epidemiological and sociological reasons that relate to truck traffic and transport that goes along the Mombasa Road just adjacent to this area. But at any rate, they're providing the project is providing them with a livelihood. These guys are measurement technicians, and the lady is also part of the crew. But there are others that are hired as forest guards to protect against poaching and things like that. So they're actually trained, and then so we do training of the trainers, and they train other folks, and also do the community outreach and engagement piece as well. So here it is. You can see the community members. These are all community leaders, community elders that are being shown by the Wildlife Works local carbon measurement staff people how to do the measurement and explaining why they're doing it. You can see that they're in an area that is an acacia, thorn acacia woodland. It's starting to get a little bit dry, so they're starting to lose their leaves, but this is a kind of outreach activity. It was very, very exciting. So yeah, so the habitat is for elephants, and here's a pod of elephants. Elephants are very interesting, very smart, very social. All these groups that go together are females. There's sisters and allo sisters, which are unrelated, not biological sisters, that are taking care of the young ones. After the males reach maturity, they end up leaving the herd. With our elephants there. Okay, we're out in the bush, and we're in Savo East actually now, and we've run across this pride of lions. Yeah. And the lions in Savo have no manes. Neither the male nor the female have manes. And this is a pride that has some of the adults that are sleeping, and the small kits that are sitting under the shade. Really, really quite beautiful. I was lucky to get this picture. I'm lucky to get it taken here. What cooperation, thank you.
Something amazing is happening in Kenya's Kasagao corridor. Today, the spectacular 500,000-acre forest known as the Kasagao corridor is home to thousands of elephants and growing population of lion, cheetah, giraffe, grevy's zebras, and even wild dogs. But just 20 years ago, the Kasagao corridor was on a fast track to becoming a barren wasteland. It was being cleared for charcoal and slash-and-burn agriculture by a desperate community of 100,000 people who were suffering from extreme poverty, with little access to education or healthcare, and one of the highest rates of HIV in the world. What made the difference? Wildlife Works. Wildlife Works protects wildlife by making conservation work for local communities. For the past 20 years, Wildlife Works has pioneered conservation solutions in the Kasagao corridor by working with local community and over 5,000 landowners. Wildlife Works created the first REDD+ forestry carbon project in the world. REDD+ projects create economic incentive to protect the forest and keep the trees standing by rewarding landowners and communities for stopping deforestation. The reward is in carbon credits, or VERs, verified emission reductions. Each VER represents 1 ton of emissions avoided. These VERs are sold to forward-thinking companies who want to reduce their carbon footprint. Protecting the Kasagao corridor avoids emitting more than 1.5 million tons of carbon dioxide per year. And with millions of dollars in sales of VERs, the Kasagao Corridor REDD+ project has provided over 300 wildlife-friendly jobs, scholarship money awarded to over 3,000 students, 15 new schools benefiting 8,500 children, Water projects now provide safe drinking water to 25,000 people. Over 50,000 trees have been planted to reforest degraded slopes. Over 500 women's groups selling handmade crafts. And eco-charcoal is being produced without cutting down a single tree. To learn more about the success of the Kasagaw Corridor REDD Plus project, go to wildlifeworks.com.